Good morning. We are pressed for time. It's my pleasure to be given the honor to introduce our next session today, and that's on noise-induced hearing loss. And it's my privilege to introduce to you two ladies who have a wealth of knowledge in this area and who are going to share that with you. First, we have Kathy Dormady. Kathy started practicing nursing in 1991. She spent the majority of her career working in the field of occupational health. She's the occupational health nurse for the Newfoundland Power, where she's responsible for the development and delivery of corporate health and welfare and wellness services. Kathy's previous work experience consists of a range of positions with both public and private healthcare settings, including adult and pediatric care, community and public health, nursing, education, workers' compensation, and occupational health. In addition to her nursing degree, she also holds several management diplomas from both Dalhousie and McMaster University. She's provincial secretary for the Association of Occupational Health Nurses for Newfoundland and Labrador, and is a Newfoundland Labrador representative for the Canadian Occupational Health Nurses Association. Second presenter, or their team, I guess, is Kelly Taylor. And she's with the Workplace Health, Safety and Compensation Commission. She's a industrial hygienist, a graduate of McGill University in Montreal. Has been working in occupational health and safety field for more than 10 years. So ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming both Kelly and Kathy.
So myself and Kathy are delighted to be here today. We initially gave this presentation at the Occupational Health Nurses Association conference back in the fall, and we were asked to come here today. It's a different approach because we have two disciplines coming together, so I'm going to present and talk about noise from an industrial hygiene point of view. And then Kathy is an occupational health nurse, so she's going to talk about her experiences with developing and implementing their specific hearing conservation program in their particular workplace. So hopefully you'll find it a rewarding and informative session, and hopefully we won't keep you too long to get to lunch. So I'm just going to go through a couple of stats, first of all. And my position at the Workplace Health, Safety and Compensation Commission, for anybody who doesn't know, it's a brand new position there. So I've been there for about a year now. The commission has launched an occupational disease prevention strategy. So we've recognized that occupational disease in this province are not going down as much as we would like. So we're dedicated to trying to prevent some of those diseases from occurring in workplaces throughout the province. So we do consider noise-induced hearing loss an occupational disease. So we know that by the time an employee notices hearing loss, they've already had irreversible damage. So some people will sometimes think of noise-induced hearing loss as saying, well, yeah, I lost my hearing, but I can get it back. I can wear hearing aids, so I didn't really lose it. You're not getting your hearing back, and you're still wearing a device at the end of the day. So obviously what we want to try to do is prevent that from happening in the first place. There's a lot of issues with hearing aids. It's better to wear hearing protection now rather than have to wear your hearing devices at the end of your career. So before we do have hearing loss, though, we can pick up some of those changes on the audiogram, which is why it's important to incorporate that into your hearing conservation program. So it is one of the most prevalent occupational diseases in this province. And we do know as well that hearing loss is completely 100% preventable. So that's what we want to try to do at the end of the day. So what are some of the stats? What are some of the numbers that we're seeing for this particular province? Because noise-induced hearing loss is an occupational disease, we know that not just in this province, but globally, there's lots of issues with our data. So there's lots of challenges that come with collecting data for occupational diseases, one of which is underreporting. So it's really difficult sometimes for someone to decide or determine that their illness was related directly to their workplace. Usually there's long latency periods, so more often than not we'll see people exposed to noise over 20 or 30 years of their working career, and then they experience the hearing loss. So it's not a sudden thing. It's not like, you're a roofer, you fall off the roof and break some bones. It's a very long process, so there's a long latency period. And there's also lots of other variables that come into play. So even age can come into play. People think as they're aging, they're losing their hearing. They may not attribute it to their particular workplace. So because of that, we know that we have challenges definitely with our stats, but it's not just in this province, that's a global issue that we continue to have challenges with. However, what are some of the stats that we're seeing? We do know that the Commission is paying out on an average more than $2 million per year for hearing-related claims, and they've remained fairly consistent over the past 5 years as well. So that's interesting. Our number of hearing-related claims, we have over the past 5 years, we've seen a slight decrease. So there is, more awareness. However, we do know that noise is still an issue in many of our workplaces. We're still seeing a lot of noise-induced hearing loss claims come into the Commission. So it does remain an issue, and the International Labour Organization and lots of international organizations as well have begun to think about noise that may present some new challenges. So Quebec just recently did a study on the impact of iPods. So what they had seen in teenagers was that their iPods were registering around 82 decibels. So they were wearing those, they're using those maybe on a daily basis for a couple hours a day. So the thinking is, how is that going to impact our future hearing claims? If they're having noise issues and they're being exposed to noise right now, what's the cumulative effect? Are we going to start to see noise claims among a much younger population? Right now, we know that all of our claims, or the majority of our claims, are coming from the age group 45 and older. Will we start to see that occurring in younger generations as well because of some of their extracurricular activities that are going to be contributing to that? And again, because it's occupational disease, you can see how the challenge is there. We know that people have extracurricular activities that influence their illness. So, there's lots of different factors that come into play. If we look at which types of industries are having the most claims, we can see that services is the number one industry there. Services really encompasses a really broad group of employers. So we would have government departments there, so anyone providing a service. If you think about your firefighters, your police officers, even Department of Transportation and Works, all that heavy machinery that they're using as well. Your utilities are in there, so Newfoundland Power would be in that group. And we also have people in there like bars, restaurants, pubs, so we obviously know that they are having noise issues as well. Interesting to note there at the end, you see agriculture as only having 4 claims over the past 5 years. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're not having noise issues. If you think about it, they definitely have the potential, and the risk is certainly there. They're using lots of different equipment that's generating noise, and we know that across the country, agriculture claims are being submitted to their respective workers' compensation boards. So the 4 in this case doesn't necessarily mean that they're not having noise issues. There could be other variables that play there. Maybe there's not a whole lot of workers in that particular industry. Maybe they're of a younger generation. So our stats, while they're beneficial, we need to consider them as well and really analyze what they're telling us. So, and what are the top 10 occupations with hearing-related claims in this province? We look and see that heavy equipment operators, except cranes, is the number 1. And then we have construction trade helpers, fishing vessel deckhands, and skippers. Next, carpenters, fish plant workers, welders, truck drivers, heavy-duty equipment operators, that includes cranes, and auto service technicians. So we can look at these stats. We use them at the Commission to help us focus what target groups we want to look at to help them with some initiatives for prevention, education, and awareness. Industry associations can use these stats as well and say, you know, if I'm the fish processing industry that we are having a large number of claims, you might want to do some work with them. And employers as well can help use these stats. So if you are in one of these categories and you haven't looked at noise in your workplace, you maybe need to go back and have a look at your hazard assessments for noise. So just a brief overview on the legislation. So what does the minimum requirements say? In Newfoundland Labrador, you can refer to Section 68 to have a look to see what it says. Basically, it refers back to the American Conference of Governmental Industrial Hygienists. And what that means is we say that you can't be exposed to more than 85 decibels for your 8-hour work shift over a 40-hour work week. So if you're working a 12-hour shift, you're going to have to adjust that 85. So 85 is for 40 hours a week. So just keep that in mind as well. The legislation does call on elimination first. So most people can recognize noise. It's, you know, easy to hear a loud noise. So people will recognize noise, and lots of times they just jump automatically to giving out hearing protection. The legislation actually will refer you and say that you have to try to eliminate your noise, so analyze where your noise sources are coming from and what can you do to reduce that noise exposure, which is going to be your most effective control. It also calls for a documented hearing conservation program. So what should be included in that particular program? Probably the first and most important piece, I guess, of your hearing conservation program is your noise survey. So measuring how much noise you actually have at your workplace. Again, most people can readily identify that noise is an issue. People will say, yeah, it's noisy, we'll wear earplugs or earmuffs or whatever. The noise survey is really important because you can determine exactly what your noise levels are. So without measuring your noise, you're not going to be able to select the correct PPE to wear if that's necessary. You don't know how much you have to reduce your noise by if you're not measuring it. And when you get in the gray area, so if you're like 84 decibels over an 8-hour shift, can you distinguish, without the use of some technical piece of equipment, what 84 decibels is as compared to 85 decibels? So it's really important to measure and know what your noise levels are in your workplace. Once you have that done, then the rest part is just really based on your noise assessment. So what types of controls do we need? If I'm measuring 110 decibels, I know that I really need to do a lot of work to get it down to 85 or below 85. So what types of controls am I going to use? You want to think about your hierarchy of controls there. So thinking about how can I eliminate this noise? We know that's not always possible. But you want to start thinking that way. Even if you can't eliminate it, how can I reduce it? You know, maybe from 90 even to 88, that's going to make a difference as well. So trying to reduce your noise, thinking about your engineering controls. Can you enclose your process? If you have a compressor or something that's generating a lot of noise, can you enclose it? Sometimes you may not be able to because of heat restrictions or temperature. Maybe you can move it to another part of the plant, you know. So you really need to start thinking about how can we reorganize this. Maybe you can put a muffler on a piece of equipment to try to get the noise levels down. If you think about your administrative controls, thinking about policies and procedures, you might want to have a preventive maintenance plan in place. So once we do know that noise levels tend to increase, so once your engines have more revolutions, that will, you know, you get belts that are starting to wear and tear, they're going to generate more noise. So if you have a really good preventive maintenance program in place, that can certainly help. You might want to also consider, in some places, it might be possible to do job rotation. So if I'm in a manufacturing plant, for example, I may be able to have workers in, you know, on a line for 1 hour, then change them out to, or rotate them out to another area that's not generating as much noise. So it may be possible to do some things like that. And then we also know that the last line of defense is our personal protective equipment. In a lot of cases, it's one of the options that we have to resort to. So you want to make sure, again, that you're looking at your noise measurements, you're selecting the most appropriate type of PPE, you're maintaining it, and you're using it and caring for it properly. And I always say that, people often ask me what's the best PPE to use. Is it earmuffs or earplugs? My response is, what do you think the worker is going to wear consistently and effectively all the time? So if someone likes to wear earplugs and they can get protection from those earplugs, let them wear the earplugs. If they want to wear earmuffs and they can get adequate sound reduction from those, as whatever they want to do to get them to wear it and use it consistently. Education and training should be an important part. It doesn't really say in the legislation how often that should be done. Most people will do it when they do their annual audiometry exams. So it's a good refresher at that point to go through, do they have any concerns with their hearing protection, or do they have any ideas about how they can reduce the noise levels that they're working around. And then program evaluation is another important step. So doing that on a regular basis. That's going to vary from employer to employer. Some employers might want to do it on an annual basis. Some other employers, if it's not, if they're not a big organization, they might want to do it every 3 years. You want to make sure you're doing it, however, when you're making changes, so you're bringing in new equipment, you're bringing in a new process, you want to make sure that you go back to your noise survey and make sure that you evaluate and that's still accurate. So just because I'm talking so much about the noise survey, some things about noise measurement. We have 2 ways that we can measure noise in our workplaces. One is an instantaneous way, so just doing spot measurements. So you just take your sound level meter in your hand and you can directly read what it's telling you. So it's going to read 85 decibels or whatever your sound level is. The other thing that you can do is full shift dosimetry, so you can actually get the workers to wear like a badge type apparatus on their shirt collar next to their ear. That's where you want to measure right at the ear because that's where they're going to be hearing the noise. They wear that for their entire shift. So that's a good indicator as well of how long and it's averaged out over their entire shift. So if they were 8 hours, and they're an electrician, and they were in the boiler room, and they were on the plant floor, and they were in the maintenance shop, you can really get a good idea of what their total exposure was, rather than if you just have a spot measurement and you're taking it in the boiler room, you're not getting the full average. Both methods have benefits, both have limitations. Most people will use them together. So you have some idea of what your spot measurements are, and then you know as well for your specific job tasks or job classifications what those workers are exposed to. And that's always a challenge, I guess, doing your noise survey, but it's important as well because it's going to show you who do we need to even include in our hearing conservation program. So do we need to include all of our employees, or are we just going to look at specific departments who we need to look at as being noise exposed? I don't have any equipment here with me to show you guys, but I would certainly encourage you to visit the exhibitors that are out on the floor. Lots of those sell noise equipment. Some of them have some here with them today. So if you want to visit them, I would encourage you to do that as well, just to get an idea of what some of the equipment looks like. When you're doing your noise measurements, if you want to do it in-house, or even if you're getting a consultant to do it, there are some CSA standards available that will guide you through that process. So again, I had talked about measuring right at the ear. So that would be in your CSA standard that would tell you your measurements have to be taken at ear level. It's no good to measure it down by their knees because the noise level is going to change by the time it reaches their ears. You want to make sure that your sampling is representative. So is one measurement good enough to represent everyone in your organization? Or are you going to have to look at looking at different job classes, so looking at the plumbers, the electricians, the line workers. So you're going to have to think about that as well. How do we figure out and make sure that we have good sampling of everyone? How many samples do we need to take? Do we need to look at different shifts? If I'm running a 24-hour operation, do my noise levels change from my day shift to my night shift? Does it change on my rotations? If I have workers who are in for 2 weeks, do they work and create different noises than workers who are working on the cross shift? So you need to be thinking about all those things as well. So looking at your descriptions of your different jobs and what are your job classifications. So that was a really brief overview of industrial hygiene and some of the issues that you can start thinking about if you haven't done that already. We do have some resources to help you out as well. So in my position, we've started developing some resources around occupational disease, and noise is one of the issues that we are targeting. So if you may hear on the radio some radio ads regarding occupational disease, so you might just want to pay a little bit of attention. They're on all radio stations across the province. They will also be in newsprint as well. And there's going to be a poster. So the first link there, if you go on our website, we also have 3 fact sheets that have been developed for noise. So those are some resources that you can use for your workplaces. We do have them at our booth if you want to visit our booth, or if not, they're available on our website as well. So I would encourage you, if you're looking for some resources, I know that a lot of people, employers, are looking for some assistance. They're good for safety talks or generating education awareness around with their workers. So I would encourage you to have a look at those as well. So I will pass it over to Kathy, who's going to talk about her specific experiences with their developing and implementing their hearing conservation program at Newfoundland Power.
Thank you, Kelly. So my half of the presentation is really just to chat about what we've done at Newfoundland Power in the last few years. Our journey basically to try and get a really strong focus on hearing protection and hearing conservation within our company. And I believe most of you know about Newfoundland Power, so in an effort to save some time, I will skip through these very quickly. But basically, we have about 650 employees. We have about 400 unionized employees, and we provide electrical services to 85% of the customers here on the island portion. So we have 23 hydroelectric plants, 130 substations, and about 11,000 kilometers of power lines. And at Newfoundland Power, we have noise. We have noise exposures. A lot of our workers, they use trucks, they're using the tools, they're working in the plants, and we know that noise exists there for them. Noise levels are exceeding 85 decibels, we're aware of that. And our biggest challenge in helping people protect their hearing is trying to manage intermittent noise exposures. If you have employees that work in areas where there's constant noise, it's uncomfortable and it's very easy to get them to wear the protection that they need when it comes to their PPE. When you have employees that are doing short jobs where there's only short bursts of noise energy, that one exposure to noise on its own may be okay. But if you add all of them together, which is what happens with intermittent noise exposures, then damage does occur. We have generation plants, gas turbines, power tools, our vehicles, some of the work tasks, right? And some of the unexpected responses from the work tasks. For example, if there was an arc flash, there's a big boom with that. And also not only in the field, but also in-house in our production center. So hearing protection has been part of our business for over 20 years, so why do we have to do anything different? We've conducted noise surveys in the past. There's been engineering controls that are put in place, and we try to continue to work on that as well. So for example, when there's an opportunity to replace tools or to get a new tool, We try and get the ones that are with the lowest noise level possible. We've had sound packages put in the mine trucks. We've had exhaust pipes moved and relocated from the trucks. We have hearing protection in our stores department at all the sites, so it's accessible to employees. We've had signs posted. We've done tests in the past, albeit inconsistent, but there was some testing done. So what we found is we had bits and pieces, but we were trying to figure, well, how can we be better at this? Because we know the noise exposure is still happening. We knew that the legislation was changing, and when I went to Newfoundland Power, it was in 2007. And part of the reason why they created an occupational health nursing position was not only for health and wellness and disability management and those types of things, but a large part of it was the hearing conservation. So we wanted to be prepared for the changes in legislation that we knew were coming. We wanted our employees to have an improved protection. And we were seeing the potential for noise exposure, and we were seeing inconsistent practices in how we can prevent noise exposure. So in 2007, the company reviewed the existing practices. We felt that there was a good foundation to improve upon. There was lots of strengths. There is a strong safety culture, and there is a commitment. But we did need a more comprehensive hearing conservation program. So the business case was made, and there was approval, and we basically did a makeover of the existing hearing conservation program that we had. So the issues that we're running into, basically the nature of our business. Newfoundland Power's job is to keep the lights on. We have a lot of employees that work in very extreme weather conditions. They are using skidoos, they're using ATVs to get to the power lines, they're using the tools and so forth. And customer service is first as well, just like safety is. We have our customers relying on electricity. We want to make sure we keep the lights on for them and the power going. So it's really important that we work diligently. The demographics of our workforce. We're not just in St. John's, we're from St. John's to Fort Bath. So with that comes different dynamics in different work offices. We did have inconsistencies, as I mentioned before, on the hearing conservation practices within the organization. There was a huge lack of knowledge is what we found, especially with the employees. We didn't know we were testing enough people. We weren't sure if the number of tests we were doing was adequate, and we've gone so far now that we feel we're testing too many people. So we've gone from one end of the spectrum to the other in the last few years. How much training people were getting versus the end of testing. What I was finding when I was having conversations with people is that the concept of hearing conservation was broken. The thought was that audiograms was one program, hearing protection is another program, putting engineering controls and stuff like that is a different program, and really it's one program altogether. We changed our focus and we included protection at home. That's a large part of our training as well. And there is individual follow-up, which is more and more now. So for example, in the past, when the audiometric tests were coming back, the follow-up with that was kind of scanty, it wasn't very consistent. Now every employee gets a copy of their audiogram. The audiogram is explained to each individual, either in a letter format or verbally. Especially with our new hires, if I get an audiogram that comes back and it's not within the healthy range and I start seeing the patterns of noise exposure there, I'll make a personal phone call to that individual and also to their supervisor to ensure that this individual understands that if there's noise that they're going to be exposed to, that they follow the appropriate procedures that we have in place for that. So the new focus, there was commitment. We had some commitment before, but the commitment is much stronger now. And it is between management and union, okay? It's everyone. Oops, I'll go back again, sorry. We did recognize that we needed a little bit more expertise and we needed to work together more cohesively in order to send out the message and to have a program that was strong and being used. We did need more resources. That's one of the things they did, as I mentioned before, they created an occupational health nursing position, but also budgeting. The first time around when we did the audiograms, there was a special budget for that. And now that's put back into the operational groups, and it's well accepted that it's part of the normal business now in budgeting. The audiograms is part of that. And we also have a partnership, and this is really, really important because between management and union, all of the employees, supervisors that work directly there, our health and safety advisors, myself, and also the human resources department. We did have to engage the human resources department specifically when we were talking about the orientation process for new hires and making sure that the audiogram testing and the baseline testing was being done. So with our new focus, it was a team approach. We had key members that were experts in the subject of noise exposure, prevention, and health management. So we're hoping that this is going to bring us to a stronger hearing conservation program. We did improve on our existing strengths. We made some key changes, and I'll talk a little bit more about two of those. But some of the things that we did do, for example, when we did do a review, we reviewed simple things, like we just went into stores and reviewed what the hearing protection we did have. We noticed on different work sites what type of products that they actually had there, and we did make some changes to what we were offering people. So for the key changes, one of the things we did was announce as a mandatory program. And it's really important that you use the right language to try and convince people when something needs to be implemented, that they need to take it serious enough. So one of the things we did say, and part of our training was that it is mandatory, that the expectation is we want people to be very careful to report noise exposures, okay, to wear the appropriate protection, and then the onus is on us to follow up and follow through when there is something reported. We clarified roles and responsibilities, especially with the supervisors. That's very important. We updated the safety training matrix. That way that we wanted to make sure that every single person that was required to be part of the hearing conservation program did get the required training piece of that. The automatic testing and the records, there was a shift, obviously, where they hired myself as a company nurse. I now am the keeper of the automatic test. It's now part of their health record, whereas before there was no health record at Newfoundland Power, but now there is. So the hearing tests are part of that record. It is managed a little bit better than before. And of course, there's lots of follow-up with the individual employees, which is important, so they know what their tests are showing. We do review the hearing protection that was there. Like I said, we did update what was in stores. We did change the focus to include at home, and we included it in our orientation program. Okay? So this was very, really important that when we get new employees, we are now in place with Newfoundland Power for many, many years, didn't hire very many people. And the demographics of our organization is changing, and we are hiring many, many people, and that's going to continue over the next few years. So it's really important that we bring it into the orientation program. And lastly, I can't say it enough, the education piece. This was really, really important. And I get, for the most part, what I find with the individual feedback that I get from employees, supervisors, managers, it's coming from the education training session that we deliver. When people have knowledge, they have the ability then to search out for more hazards. They're looking for things, they're reporting noise exposures, and their expectation is that we help them with that. Okay? So the education piece is critical to the program. So what we did was we launched a corporate campaign. We have a 2-hour training session that's delivered in partnership between myself and the safety advisor. Okay? It is a joint program. The training session is mandatory, so if you do not get your training that you're scheduled for, you will be rescheduled, and everyone has to have this training done. It includes lecture, pictures, videos, handouts, discussions, practical, and also a quiz. We felt it was very important to add in there the practical, because we're finding that people assumed they were putting on their hearing protection properly, and they're actually not. And they learn a lot, and it takes very little time to include this in the training to make sure that people put on their hearing protection properly. And the other part was to make it more serious and more important as we added a quiz to the training. Now the quiz is not difficult. The intention is that people take away the information, they learn it, and they're able to use it. So it's not that tricky, it's only 10 questions. But it does help people know that they're paying attention, help them know because there's an exam at the end that they pay attention. So we know if they're taking the information in. We do offer free earplugs for home use. We have no issue if anyone needed a handful of disposable earplugs, if they were going hunting, if they were going skidooing, and they didn't have any at home. We encourage people to go ahead and put some in your pocket and take them home, because we want people to have the protection they need. So in our education session, in our training, I actually had the good fortune to have an audiologist who does hearing conservation training provide me with copies of some of the pictures and diagrams and so forth that he uses in his training. So we're very fortunate for that. And he did review our training package and gave it the thumbs up. So we're very pleased with the package we put together. We talk about the mechanism of hearing. We talk about hearing loss. I explained the audiograms, what needs to happen before you have your test done, what the results look like, what the noise notch, that hearing pattern, what that looks like, and why we have to take the audiograms. I talk about workers' compensation, and I encourage you to do that as well. It's really, really important that our workers have knowledge of what their rights are, and it's everyone's right to put in a claim at the commission if they feel that something has happened to them on the job. And hearing conservation and hearing protection, noise exposure is no different. Now, as a company, we had 4 claims last year. And with the demographics of our workforce, we right now have a lot of older workers, which probably means that they've had exposure from working with the company a long time because there was noise exposures. So we may still see in the near future a few more claims coming through. So we expect that. And when you educate employees and you let them know and you provide an environment where they can report things comfortably, you're going to see a few extra claims. So we're ready for that, we accept that. But with this program, what we hope to see, that in the future, we'll have less and less claims, and we won't have to worry about our older workers that are now our younger workers having some of the same issues that we see. We do talk about the government regulations. We talk about our own policy and procedures in-house, of course. We talk about the noise measurement, noise controls, explain to them a lot about the intermittent noise exposure because that's the biggest culprit that we have at Newfoundland Power. We talk about the PPE and the noise reduction rating that comes with the PPE. Of course, I mentioned practical and the quiz. And we usually get and ask employees to give some feedback after the session. As far as I can recall, there's been absolutely no negative comments with the changes we've made with the program. In fact, employees are telling us to do more education and to repeat the education. So employees are certainly taking this in and appreciate what we're doing. So for the audiogram management, which is the other key change that we did do, the testing and the interpretation of the results is by trained professionals. We do contract out, even though I have some expertise in doing the audiograms and reviewing the results and so forth. We do contract out, and we have an audiologist who will review the results and interpret them for us, okay? The reports are maintained as part of the health record. They are confidential. We don't report back the details of it, obviously, but we want to make sure that employees who do put in a claim to workers' compensation, who are having changes, right, in their hearing, are being diligent as well in what they need to do to protect their hearing. Reports are copied to the employees with direction for follow-up, and this is important. And the individual counseling, I think, goes a long way, specifically when it's more personal, makes it more real. And to be quite honest, most of the calls that I will get from employees are the older employees that we do have. And what's happening is they're getting ready for retirement. Right? So we don't want that. We don't want that happening, as I'm sure most of you don't want either. That part of the retirement is, getting ready to get your hearing aids. That's not what we want. So our focus is on prevention, education, and hopefully getting the word out so that we can do our best to prevent that in the future. So with the program evaluation, this part is really tough. Okay? We review our safety program every year, annually, and that's a routine process for all safety policies and procedures are all reviewed. We do get feedback from the participants, and so far it's all been positive. In fact, they want us to do more. We are talking about refresher training now. We're 5 years into the program, and we pretty much have captured all existing employees in the training. We do new employees all the time. I did one yesterday morning, for example, just because I happened to be out here again, so I had the opportunity to do that. We'll have another one in June, and probably after that, when the need comes up, we'll do that. But we're trying to determine now how to plan out the repeat training and how we will do that. Supervisory training, a lot of this is done now through one-on-one. You get more response when it's very personal. And I find there's so much openness now to having these discussions that things move a lot quicker than they did before. So the potential for increased claims is there without the effective program, and we realize that. So we're hoping with this new program that we do have, that we're going to see positive changes in the future and improve what we already got. The other part of the program evaluation is what I want to look at this year after we have our next round of automatic testing is because we're into the program 5 years, I'll have a really good look at where we've been, where we've gone, and make some recommendations for the future on the program. So we do have ongoing challenges, of course, like all organizations. Monitoring of active participation, okay? That comes down to the supervisors, and we're getting better and better at that all the time, but it is a challenge, I think, for most. We believe in coaching to increase the understanding. Change doesn't happen as successfully if it's forced, so it is a coaching approach, and it seems to be working for us. It doesn't happen overnight. Change does take time. We have to get to a lot of people, and changing behaviors is a challenge, as you know. And of course, the hearing conservation program has multiple elements that blended in with the work tasks that happen at Newfoundland Power. It's always a challenge, but we do our best. From the success side, I know hearing conservation is accepted within the organization, and I know the awareness is there, and we'll continue to build on that. Comments, for example, that come to my office and people phone me is, when are you doing the next training session? These are employees that are asking these questions, not management. When do I get my hearing tested? Managers are now funding the cost, no issues, it's built into the budgets. Lots of rescheduling efforts. If somebody does have to miss their automatic test or misses the training, lots of effort goes into making sure that person gets the test and the training. There's lots of noise exposure awareness. There is an increased use of the hearing protection devices that we do have at Newfoundland Power. We want to continue to build on that, of course. Hearing protection, for some reason, is not as accepted as your